And our top story today, for the first time in more than a year and a half, Canadians can once again freely drive into the United States. Now you can see their traffic moving in both directions at the busiest border crossing between Canada and the U.S., the Ambassador Bridge that connects Windsor, Ontario with Detroit. Now the U.S. is reopening its land border to fully vaccinated Canadian travelers. It did so just shortly after midnight early this morning. And from the Ambassador Bridge, take a look at this as we see some Canadians were able to get into the U.S. this morning. You're now looking at the lineup at L'École Québec. That's the crossing into upstate New York from the Belle Provence. For the first time, as we say, since March 2020, fully vaccinated Canadians can drive or take a ferry to the U.S. for non-essential trips. And as a result, while snowbirds are flocking south, Canadians wanting to be reunited with loved ones on the U.S. side as well, not to mention cross-border shoppers, all of them getting the green light as of early this morning. But be aware, the wait to enter the United States was several hours for many this morning. And if you see images like that and think, well, taking a plane may be the answer, we got to tell you, there are new rules for Canadians flying into the U.S. as well. So a lot to break down, and we have reporters right across our country today at 3 border crossings, in fact. Brett Ruskin is in St. Stephen, New Brunswick. Chris Ensing is standing by at the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel. And Alison Northcott, well, she is at the crossing that we just showed you in L'École Québec. And Alison, let's begin with you and that lineup that we were seeing in the video. What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, there is still a long lineup here at the border crossing at L'École Québec, the border crossing with New York State. And earlier this morning, I was hearing from people who had been waiting more than 3 hours to cross the border. The people I'm speaking with now say it's been about an hour and a half, 2 hours. So still a pretty significant wait, but it does seem to be getting shorter. As you mentioned, a lot of the people traveling here today are snowbirds. So they're heading to places like Florida or Arizona for the winter, and many of them haven't been able to drive across the border for more than a year and a half. So, the wait might be frustrating, but they are eager and excited that they are now allowed to be able to cross the border. Have a listen to some of the people I spoke with earlier.
It's okay. We knew about it, so it's not a big deal.
And what brings you to the U.S.?
Well, the sun, vacation, relaxing, seeing some friends and partying a little bit.
Oh, we know that when we come in here, we know we wait for that.
You expected a long wait?
Oh yeah.
Is it worth it?
Yeah, it's okay.
So there are rules for being able to go into the U.S. at land border crossings. You have to be fully vaccinated, and you have to have proof of vaccination if you are asked for it. Unlike air travelers into the U.S., you don't need to have a negative PCR test. But U.S. Customs and Border Protection is urging people to be ready with all of their documents and to be patient. Have a listen.
The most likely scenario is going to be, we are going to ask you whether you're essential or non-essential. We are going to ask you if you are fully vaccinated. There's going to be a few added steps. And the best thing that travelers can do is just be prepared for those. Be patient. Don't expect to just rush through in a couple of minutes.
And so that is what we're seeing here at the L'École border crossing this morning. I can see a long line of RVs waiting to get across. So patience is what they will need this morning.
Well, let me pick up on a point that you just made there, Alison, because it's interesting that Americans don't require a negative test of Canadians going south, but there is a test needed when Canadians come back north.
Absolutely. And those rules, Canadian Border Services Agency is reminding people that those rules to get into Canada are still in place. So you can go to the U.S. under the U.S.'s rules, but coming back, you do still need to be fully vaccinated. You need to have that proof of a negative PCR test that was taken no more than 72 hours in advance. And then Border Services also says if you're doing a short trip, a day trip or a shopping trip, you can take that test in Canada. And then if you're within the 72 hours, you can travel back without having to get another test. But we've heard this morning from some mayors of border communities in Canada Canada and the U.S. And they're saying that they're hoping that the government will abandon that requirement. They say that it can be very expensive, especially for families, and that it's redundant and unnecessary, and that it's bad for tourism. So they're calling on the government to abandon that particular requirement to be able to cross the border. But for now, it is still in place. And Canada Border Services is reminding people that they do need to do that. They also need to fill out the ArriveCAN app when they're coming back. And if there is an influx in travelers of people who are now able to drive across to the U.S., they say there will likely be an influx of travelers coming back to Canada. So it's something people need to be aware of, and they also need to plan for long wait times on their way home.
Allison, thank you for that. The CBC's Allison Northcott. Well, let's now go from Lacolle, Quebec, and head over to Windsor, Ontario, the Detroit-Windsor crossing, in fact, where we see the CBC's Chris Ensing right now. Chris, good to see you. How are things shaping up there? Chris, let me stop you for 1 second. I believe we have an audio issue with you right now. I'm going to get some clarity from the control room. Are we okay with audio here? Chris, do you want to try that one more time?
Let's try and see if that helps us at all there, Michael.
There we go. Technology. Gotta love it, Chris.
That's a big change. We got it. No worries. It's a big day, man. I think that people are excited about it. And we're just happy to show some of that joy. I was speaking with someone earlier this morning who talked about this day being circled on a calendar, and finally being able to cross back over. And as we heard from Allison there talking about traffic being so delayed out here in Windsor, we haven't seen any problems at the Detroit-Windsor tunnel right here, which is usually used for commuters. No lineups, no backups. And it's been one of those things that people have been looking forward to, but that cost of that test might be what's preventing those day trips. About 2/3 of people who went from Canada to the United States in 2019 were people who were doing a day trip, but because you need that test on the way back, people I've spoke with said they're just not prepared to make that kind of a financial commitment to go across for some quick cross-border shopping. We'll see if that changes, though, if anything switches. As you've been telling people, the mayors on these border cities have been calling for changes to happen with those PCR tests. But there are still people who are going across to try and enjoy a beautiful day in the United States for a non-essential reason for the first time since March 2020.
Okay, so still concerns about Canadians who are returning north with those PCR tests that we're hearing from, as you say, border leaders. But let's talk a bit more about the excitement that you referred to right off top. What have people been telling you about their reaction to today's reopening?
Family reunification's a big one. Being able to go see people, loved ones that you just haven't been able to get across to go and see during such a chaotic time in all of our lives. Another big part of this too is just financially. We've heard from musicians here who make a living on this border community by playing concerts venues across on the other side of the river that they can see every day of their life but just can't get to. Now the border opening allows them to get across. But love is always the biggest factor. And this morning we were speaking with Lauren Hedges, who was very excited to be able to see her boyfriend in the opposite side of the border in America. And when we spoke with her this morning, it was just pure joy that she had on her face as she thought about what it would be like to be back with him again.
It's been awful. Being so close is great in normal times, but extra painful in pandemic times. Just seeing all of the other people who are like boyfriend adjacent, like his band members and his coworkers and his family, like all these people that over the last 6 years I've become genuine friends with. I get to see them again. It's going to be so good.
Now again, talking about how long it takes to get across the border on a place like Windsor, you're very close to two crossings. After our interview, she popped over to the Windsor-Detroit tunnel. Took her about 5 minutes to get here. Said it took her about 30 seconds to go across. And I believe we'll pull a picture up here now of what today is really all about for a lot of people. That love, that connection, finding someone that you've missed for so long and being able to be back in their arms. Now, Michael, I should add, this is the last time I think you'll hear from me on the Windsor side. We're going to cross over ourselves and pop over to Detroit and see what that process is like, and pop to a drive-through test center as well, who will be very busy today as they get their things in order for people who are coming back into Canada.
Okay, look forward to that. Chris, who knew you were such a romantic? Thank you for that. The CBC's Chris Ensing in Windsor, Ontario. Okay, well, let's shift focus now. Head over to the CBC's Brett Ruskin. He is in St. Stephen, New Brunswick, across the bridge from Calais, Maine. Brett, nice to see you. What are you seeing over there?
Michael, we saw, Allison with those long delays. We saw Chris with that 30-second delay. I can beat that. Look at that. There is zero delay right now here at this border crossing. That is the bridge across to from New Brunswick to Maine. Apparently, it was very busy at midnight with RVs crossing. They all kind of gathered in a parking lot and headed across. Midnight, obviously, being the time that things opened up here at this crossing, as well as many other crossings all across the country along the border. And so, as we've just been hearing, they still need your proof of vaccination, things like that, to get across. I have been looking at the different activities that you can do down south. You might think that once you cross the border that you're all good, and that you have the U.S. has the opportunity to have mixed vaccinations, to have one Pfizer, one Moderna. But a quick Google search of some of the activities, some of the reasons why you might go south of the border. You have, if you want to go see Boston Bruins play Ottawa Senators tomorrow night, according to their website, you have to have two Pfizers or two Moderna. Now, that might change today, that might change in the future, but it says that you have to have matching vaccines. If you want to drive to New York, go to see a Broadway, take the kids to Lion King, people 12 and under have to have a rapid test less than 6 hours before the beginning of each show. And so just because you're able to make it across the border at a quiet little town like this one, a quiet little crossing here with that mixed vaccine, be sure to not only check the government websites, but also the websites of the different companies or the different activities that you plan on doing south of the border.
Okay, so lots of rules Canadians need to keep in mind when they travel south. Any other details you want to share with us as they pack to cross the border for this non-essential travel?
Well, one of the people that I spoke with after, chasing down an RV, one of the few that I saw. You're going to see people that do cross over. Oh, that might be a traveler. Well, it's breaking news here when a car goes past, when a car uses the bridge. That's the highlight of my day right there. Okay. But no, I was able to speak with someone who was traveling from Abbotsford, BC to here across Canada, spending 70 or 80 days doing so. This is the farthest eastern crossing from mainland Canada to the United States, so they are certainly getting their value from the continent, certainly on their trip. They're going to head down south and visit with their son that they haven't seen for 597 days that this border has been closed. Michael.
Yeah, you know what? I've got 30 seconds here, but I do also want to ask, because there are some changes as well for air travelers. We're focusing so much on the land border right now, but air travelers also have some few things to keep in mind.
One extra change there with air travel taking effect today. You will have to have a test done 3 days before your departure time. That has to do and applies to people 2 years and older. So you'll have to get the family tested less than 3 days before your flight. That is a new rule that takes effect today. That's in addition to being fully vaccinated to board that flight to the United States. Michael.
Okay, Brett, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Brett Ruskin in St. Stephen, New Brunswick.